It was just brilliant. And Phil was just in tears. It was just classic.
I think he would have killed to be a happily married man with children and be a grandfather. But the pressures of life were, very heavy on him. But Philip felt, because he was the rocker, that he had to be the stud. And that was one of the problems too. These contradictions that would kill people.
Phil and monogamy were uneasy bedfellows. His underlying vulnerability made him irresistible to women.
Terrible Romeo. No, not terrible. He was a great Romeo. For all my brashness in those days, with girls, I was absolutely useless. And you'd see him every night. So I started trying to pick up his pickup lines. Oh, you got lovely eyes, haven't you? But it doesn't work with a Glaswegian accent. Phil with the deep Dublin, oh, no, you're lovely. And the girls are going, and I tried it and it didn't work.
I think that he had a lot of attention from women, just purely the nature of who he was and what he did and the way he did it.
Yeah, he loved women, yeah. Well, we all did, but he had it down to a fine art,
We probably got that wasted most times, that women at the end of the night didn't really come into it. We'd lost in it. We'd look and talk about it and laugh and joke and, what big men we were going to be. We were going to take 2, 3, 4 home. But by the time we'd finished drinking and whatever Phil was up to, that had gone out the window. We just enjoyed each other's company and went our own way.
How can I say this politely? Philip had an voracious appetite for everything.
And we'd been on the road for several months. So he'd been, shall we say, quite active on the female front. And we're in this little dressing room down in the basement. There was a toilet at the end with a wooden door. So you could actually, like there's men's toilets, you can actually see people's feet underneath. I had previously burnt a hole in my finger from falling asleep with a cigarette, completely wrecked. So the doctor had given me some cream to put on it. Phil went to the toilet and he said, my thingy's a bit sore. So I gave this cream that the doctor had given me to Scott, because I knew what it would do, right? Because I had already put it on. I know what's going to happen, right? So I said, Scott, give that to him. So Scott went over to the toilet and gave it to him. We were just about to go on stage, so he had the leathers on, right? So underneath the door, you could see the leathers and the boots. And all of a sudden, there was, oh, you fucking bastard! Because he put the cream on his dick. And of course, it just singed it off. So all we saw was, under that gap, the feet going like that. Oh, fuck's sake, like that. And then come back down again, and he came out and he said, so we had to go at Scott, because he thought it was Scott's cream. It wasn't, it was mine. But I got away with it, and we did the gig. And all it wasn't any disease or anything, he'd just been a shade too active, as he always was.
Well, I'm tough, I'm rough, I'm ready, and I'm able to pick myself up from under this table. Don't just stick no sign on me, I got no label. I'm a little unsure, unsound, and unstable.
The immense success of Thin Lizzy would have its price. The pressure of life in an iconic rock band put Phil under increasing strain.
For Philip, fame is a deadly poison chalice. It couldn't have been any more poisoned.
For somebody like Phil, it's very difficult to really make a judgment on people hanging on, because you do get a large amount of people that are genuine friends and people that want to be involved on a genuine level. And because of his nature, and he was a gent, and he did like to party like we, and socialise like we all do. And I think people took advantage of that at certain times.
You could play to 70,000 people and it might have no effect on you. Like, you're out there and you're doing it. But once you got to wherever you're going, you find that there's actually nothing there. So the more famous you get, the further you get away from whatever you thought it was going to be.
The world created out of Philip and Thin Lizzy a wham bam thank you ma'am type of superstar. And Philip was never comfortable with that. But on the other hand, he had to live up to the image, and in a way that's what destroyed him.
Chinatown, Chinatown. In Chinatown.
By 1982, Thin Lizzy's popularity had peaked and record sales had begun to falter. Ultimately trapped by his own hard man image, Phil stumbled towards escalating drug use.
Don't stand a chance if you go down to Chinatown. Laughing and crying, you know that it's a fact. They're not laughing, they are crying, 'cause they won't go back. Oh no, you don't come back. Not from Chinatown.
The life you live in that business is full of an awful lot of very evil people who congregate around people like Philip, especially when they weaken. And Philip weakened.
By now, the drug of choice was heroin.
No one realises how dangerous the big one is, and what happens is you're in it and suddenly you realise you can't get out of it. And the people all around him, the whole thing around him, his entourage, didn't help.
I was aware there was drugs, but I used to say to Philip, never ever go on heavy drugs. And he'd say, Jesus, ma, everybody, we've all tried everything. And brush it aside.
I confronted him seriously about cleaning up when I heard he was on heroin because I was genuinely shocked. He claimed to me he was smoking it. So I thought, well, that's easier to fix than injecting it. I didn't know he was injecting it. Nobody did. But he would have needed more than my help to clean up.
Because if you stand there in front of someone and say, look, in the end, I'm going to take this, and, it's going to fuck me up. Do you think anyone's going to do that? Nope.
Adding to Phil's problems, Thin Lizzy were on the verge of bankruptcy. To raise cash, the Thunder and Lightning album and farewell tour were planned, which ironically created a fresh surge of interest in the band.
Are you ready to rock? Are you ready to rip it up? You know what I'm talking about? Are you ready to give it up?
The final lineup of Thin Lizzy, the one with John Sykes on guitar and Darren Warden on keyboards, was magnificent. They had a real power, a real aggression. You really would never have guessed that it was going to be the last series of shows that they played.
Are you ready to beat it up? You ready to take it? You know what I'm thinking of? You know what I'm thinking? Are you ready to rock?
Despite the revival in Lizzy's fortune, the band finally fell apart.
The reason that Thin Lizzy broke up depends on who you believe. Some say Tony Brainsby, their publicist at the time, dreamt it up as an idea to sell tickets, and the band went along with it grudgingly. I think by that time there were certain people in the band felt that they had reached the end, it was running a little dry, but you'd never have thought that if you'd seen the shows on that tour.
And that period of music had really come to an end. He was truly heartbroken when Thin Lizzy split up, and he felt it was premature. He was devastated by the loss, and that's the right word for it, of Thin Lizzy, because they were like his family.
In the old days, I could sing the blues. I had nothing to live for.
Phil's troubles increased during 1983 with the disintegration of his marriage.
They were going through a rough time, and who's to blame anybody in that situation? They were two kids facing an enormous series of problems, a lot of it drink and drug related from Philip's point of view.
It's no secret that Phil and Caroline were having a tough time, the rock and roll lifestyle and everything else like that.
He must have felt bad if he was talking to me about it. You know what I mean? That's all I'm saying.
In the end, he was just crushed.
Oh, mama, your boy has lost control. The party's over now. Everybody's going home. The band is packing up. I'm on my own.
During this harrowing period for Phil, it was the uniquely strong relationship with his mother that held them together.
Phyllis was very private. No one knew too much about her. She probably told me more than she did anyone else. She was a very private person. And I think you could see the respect they had for each other. She was a very proud mother, quite rightly so. and he loved her to death. I mean, you could see when they got together, it was a special bond.
She was a big influence in Philip, you know, she really was. You know, she was really interested in him and how he was doing and what he was making of his life, you know.
Everywhere he went on tour, she came. He'd sit her in a special place in the auditorium, and he'd shine the guitar up in her face. And that was the connection. He made a connection. This is for you, Mother.
He loved and doted on his mother, and vice versa, I think. You know, Phil and I would go out in Dublin and stuff, and we'd come back, and you know, she really was the, you know, it was the mother and son thing, and I'd be standing to one side like it was, you know, your best mate being told off.
If you got out of hand or did anything, Phyllis was there, and by God, you wouldn't do it again. So there's a big family thing going on, and anything to do with the band, she was so precious with. And she would look after every single member. It was her family, still is.
I remember once when he was a little boy, he said, when I grow up, I'll buy you lots of perfume and I'll buy you a big, big house. And he bought me this house for my 50th birthday.